Demon Hunter, Mage, and Control Priest in this lineup for Frenetic, and I love it.
It's wild, yeah, and I think, you know, obviously when I say Thijs is like just playing 4 good decks, I'm not saying that like he's misunderstood how Last Hero Standing works, or he's forgotten how to play Last Hero Standing. I'm saying Thijs has prepped a Last Hero Standing lineup, and this is the lineup he's come up with and decided is the best. It's just interesting that it looks a lot more like a Conquest lineup, when we've kind of been pushing this idea, this dynamic that the older school players will have a better handle on how Last Hero Standing breaks down in terms of, you know, weird little tech cards and counter Q decks and all that kind of stuff. It's just interesting that it's ended up in this dynamic.
And as we kick this off, and you know, Frenetic's got that score on the left, which is pretty good, but does have the Il'gynoth in hand. How do you actually see this matchup going generally? Because it's one we've seen a lot over the weekend.
Yeah, it's very odd. It's a straight-up card draw race most of the time. Neither player really capable of pressuring the other one in any meaningful way. And the ability for Mage to burn out incrementally is quite limited. It's not like you can just Rune Daub them in the face on 2, Fireball them in the face on 4, Apexis Blast them in the face on 5, right? Eventually they'll just, you know, duplicate a Moarg, play those 2 Moargs, I-beam, and then your first 8 turns of the game have just been completely eliminated at that point.
Right.
So Mage just kind of has to focus on card draw and accruing resources as well, and looking for the blue card, the Incanter's Flow that Thijs has just picked up there, the unconventional route off the Rune Daub. But what that means is when you have your deck discounted, you can save up like 18 burst in 1 turn, right? 20 burst in 1 turn, and then maybe stick 1 minion to go alongside that and just, you know, push for massive amounts of damage in one go, because otherwise the Demon Hunter is just going to slowly but surely creep their way through the deck, and eventually their ability to just deal 24, which is generally all they need to do in this matchup, because they'll get little pieces of chip damage in the early game, very, very straightforward to deal 24 damage for the Demon Hunter.
And would you agree in this matchup specifically that having the Skull starting on the left outweighs the negative of having a 4-mana Il'gynoth, because there's that limitation of damage that you actually need to do?
Yeah, exactly. Because it's a 24 matchup, yeah, I absolutely would take that trade, yeah. I think in the matchups where you have to be pushing the big combos against big armor classes, even like you can count Druid among that, because they still have the opportunity to go like Solar Moon Touched or Solar Cenarian or whatever to get a bunch of armor. Then yeah, that Il'gynoth blocking at all does become a problem, because you want to get as many discounts as possible. But to do 24, you don't even need any discounts outside of the Raging Fellscreamer one that Frenetic already has. So just having access to the Il'gynoth will, on average, just speed up the turn that you can do 24 on, right? Because you just have the important piece already. So all of the other pieces can just kind of be flexibly built around that.
Also, that I-beam actually is pretty important too now, isn't it? Coming off the Skull, because it's not really ever going to hit an outcast position ever again in this game. After this turn, then you can always have that for 0 too.
Honestly, might just fire it off right now.
Oh, okay. I was just looking at Spectral first, just to look.
There's a chance he still gets to Spectral for 2 cards, right? Depending on what the next draw is. So I think it's worth speculating for 1 turn as to whether you can make that happen. I'm on board with this. Disruption here with the ring toss, but Frenetic will be more than happy to just probably toss this 0-cost philosophy into the secrets to check for counterspell first and foremost.
I'm not even going to check, but that was a Netherwing portal. It had to be. The secret choice is quite narrow, isn't it, versus Demon Hunter?
It is, yeah. There's only very niche scenarios where something like a Oasis water element, what's it called? Why have I just forgotten the name of the...
Oasis Ally.
Oasis Ally. I wanted to call it Oasis Surger. I'm like, that's not the right card at all.
That's just a different card.
Just a completely different Hearthstone card. Yeah, very rare that like Oasis Ally or something like that is going to come into play. But
and like
niche scenarios to look out for.
Same with Barrier in a way, because very quickly the Demon Hunter will work out that it could be Barrier, right? Because they'll cast a spell, they get rid of like 2 of the secrets, and so on. So, yeah, pretty narrow, but Thijs did hit decent ones.
Yeah, the problem is the flex between Rigged Fair and Ice Barrier, whereas
Sure.
like you do sometimes get value out of Ice Barrier even when it seems like you shouldn't, because the Demon Hunter has to play around Rigged Fair game, because as I said, that's the goal for the Mage, is just to accrue like 18 to 20 burst damage in one turn in hand wherever possible. So Rigged Fair game obviously helps them to do that.
And I like this, right? Not much to devolve against Demon Hunter. You know what? Give them one less card draw. That's what they want to do, so stop them doing it.
And he is just going to dump a Fireball here, which is very reasonable, because he wants maximum hand space potential for next turn with the Cram Session about to fire off, potential for Spring Waters and all that business coming through. And job done. Thijs set to 23. So the game is set up now for the rest of the game. yeah. And now with Il'gynoth and 2 Moargs in hand, Frenetic will have to pay 2 mana for one of those Moargs, because it's only a Fell Screamer discount as it stands.
I will tell you right now, though, if there was ever a turn to draw a flow right before you're about to Phoenix Cram Session,
that's right.
That'll do. 7 damage. And now this is where it gets a little bit tricky, doesn't it? Like, you would naturally want to Fireball because of the spell damage. You assume it's going to be removed. But if it gets removed, does it get removed through use of Lifesteal? In which maybe you don't Fireball. So really tricky decision there, Thijs. Going to just bank the 8.
Yep, I like it. Wampu's dead draw. That is the downside of the tech card, even though I've said it's much more acceptable to be playing polarizing tech cards in your decks in Last Hero Standing, because you have a higher degree of control over which matchups you play. It is still a punish here to have that Acidic Swampooze as a completely dead card in his hand right now. Aster Skull and just hit like I-Beam, right? I think from this position. Ideally, he would have liked to have just picked up I-Beam right now off this straight up.
Yeah, just keep it simple.
Yeah. I guess Gnarg Glavesmith is a consideration.
Demons.
Would mean he's healing for 7 at this point, but he just doesn't really have an answer to the Phoenix. With Moarg Immolation Gnarg Glavesmith. Okay, that's kind of interesting.
I think I just like Skull.
I mean, it was my first instinct, so I'm not going to lie, but...
Oh, you changed your mind, Sol. You're out of it now. You can't change now.
Fair enough.
Frenetic going with the board clear with the help of some extra spell damage. Pushes himself back up to 17, which has got to feel safe, right? He's just seen a Pexis Blast and Fireball. You've got to feel fairly safe.
Scary turn, though. I was about to say, real clencher of a turn, because no minions on board. You know the amount of damage potential that can come through with the likes of Mask of Cthulhu here. And I'm sure Thijs is going to cash this out immediately.
Yep, even has the benefit now of corrupting the ring toss that he just picked.
Yes. Frenetic needs some help. Ooh, that's not it. Decision time, Frenetic.
Lethal.
How important are these skull discounts to you?
I grow impatient.
And no, it's 12, right? I think.
Yeah, I think, again, if there was any spell damage, we could talk.
Mm-hmm. Trying to preemptively look for extremely cheeky ways to do it if this hits I-Beam as well. Like, you'd have to be able to play the minions and have one of them survive the I-Beam that you plays, which might be the Ooze, but I'm not sure if that actually fits into it.
Okay.
Poor wall. Time grows short.
It's got to be good enough, right? It's got to be good enough. Play it all. Don't even count. That's $1 million. It's $1 million! Yeah, I like
What's $1 million?
healing. You just got to take the healing. Yeah. Exactly.
Looks like he locked it all in. Got the health he needed.
Absolutely just has to take the healing.
Boom.
All the way back up to 28. Yep.
And Thijs' correct facial response there. I would have looked exactly the same. We're going, oh, okay. How do I deal 28 now, guys? Anyone?
And I think in the panic there at the end, he actually managed to get that exactly right as well by using the right Moarg, the one that was only discounted by the Fell Screamer as opposed to the one that was discounted by the Skull. Like, it's when you're scrambling that hard, it's very difficult to get those details right, and I think Frenetic did there. So well done.
And it's difficult because just doing the turn and healing is more important than getting it correct, so to speak.
Yes. And now, while we have a moment of calm, we can take another look at these last 4 remaining cards, which is one of them being the Fellscreen Blast. So as long as Frenetic can move out the right-hand side of his hand here, he does have the potential to Skull. But the problem is, as soon as he spends 1 mana and then also plays Skull, he can then no longer play Il'gynoth, which is making his ability to get the guaranteed lethal very slim at this point.
Can he ever get there with just playing Skull as is?
I think with the huge health buffer that he's brought on from the previous turn, yes, absolutely.
Like Skull this turn and then kill him next turn, right?
Yes. I'm just saying his ability to like answer the board immediately, to kill immediately is very limited by the fact that he has a full cost Il'gynoth. But this should still get him hold of... Oh, okay. That Immolation Aura, which he absolutely needs here because it takes a supreme amount of damage off the board here.
I mean, this is he working out whether he goes Warblades or something instead? Because surely he just immolates every single day of the week here.
Second ring toss, counterspell things to consider, for example. So if he plays the Immolation Aura, he only has 1 spell remaining in his entire deck. And at that point, he loses the game to counterspell straight up. So at that point, he could consider taking the risk by playing Eldrazi Warblades instead, which does also beat the counterspell out. It's just a matter of whether he thinks he can die in the process of doing that. So just a pretty straight up 50-50 choice of whether dying is more likely or whether your opponent dropping counterspell is more likely. Does go with the Immolation Aura in the end, and that ring toss is going to be there for Thijs. And look at Thijs. Tell me what Thijs is counting right now. I promise you it's remaining spells in the hand, and I think he will come to the conclusion very quickly that he can lock this game out with counterspell. Pax first with the High Abbess, just in case anything disastrous were to happen. Mazaki.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We're going to get the party started here. All right, there goes the ring toss.
Oh, Frenetic knows. He knows.
80%. 80% to hit the counterspell. Whoa!
Oh, well, that is unfortunate.
Oh, my God.
I think Thijs needed to snap pick that and hope for a concede. And just be confident. Like, you pick those secrets very confidently at that point.
Frenetic, mate, you're about to get some really good news this turn.
Yeah.
Unbelievably, you have won this game. There is the sigh of relief. He has seen it early. Oh my goodness, that is a tough decision to make in that spot, right? Like, he was thinking about it, I saw it, Thijs knew as well. You immediately saw Thijs counting on his fingers of what the remaining cards were. Then he went, okay, right, 1 spell, I know how I win this game. Even in that moment, Thijs's perfect Hearthstone brain still forced that he did everything else perfectly that turn as well, even though none of it mattered outside of whether he hit counterspell. He still attacked with the Abbess first, he still drew cards to start the turn, he still played Mazaki, so he was picking up the spell damage along the way. He did everything perfectly, but he then just missed an 80%er to hit counterspell at the end of the game. And Frenetic did have the opportunity to play around it, but again, not even calling that strictly right or wrong, right? Because I think you do open yourself up to ways to just die on the spot if you don't clear the board with the Immolation Aura there instead. So I think calculated risk either way. Everyone involved knew what the deal was. 4 out of 5 times, Thijs wins that game. 1 out of 5, Frenetic wins. This was the one.
Yeah, really, really tough. I think, you know, both players had really good ideas there. Of course, Thijs saw it, but from Frenetic, I think that is an incredibly tough decision, right? Because yes, he saw he saw a Mask, a Fireball, and a Pexis Blast, but there could be plenty more where that came from, right? And that's the problem. He would have took so much damage by just leaving them. Even if, for example, he went Eldrazi Warblade's hero power and hit the taunt, if it wasn't the weak one, then he would have just taken 1 extra damage. So it's not as if you can say, oh, he could have just removed the taunt for nothing, so he should have done that, or gained some health. He would have actually taken more damage if it wasn't the weak one. So really, really, really tricky now. But as we move on into our game number 2, Subtle, how are you fancying Frenetic's chances outside of the fact that he is 1-0 up, and more the fact that he's sat on Demon Hunter against Warrior and Rogue?
Yeah, and it's very interesting, right? Because this is where the last hero standing techs do come into play, because he's teched for things that Thijs doesn't really have. You know, there is a warrior, but it's not the Japan tech control warrior with Bulwark of Azeroth coming out the other way, right? Where Acidic Swampoots can end up being super relevant. Now, against Rush Warrior, which could be the potential counter Q here from Thijs. Wow, he's actually going Miracle Rogue. Okay, we'll break that down in a second. But the Acidicus still can do some work because, for example, Sword Eaters representing just a lot of pressure in terms of just weapon swings going face can actually end up being very relevant in the late game, so the U's can still do something. But his techs have missed a little bit in terms of the lineups that he's looking to deal with. But interestingly, Thijs has chosen to lead out with the Rogue here instead, feeling like he needs to preserve perhaps his Rush Warrior to run into the Face Hunter instead in this world to pick up a counter Q. Obviously a lot of intricacies going back and forth, and you can't just say in Last Hero Standing, okay, what's my best deck to Q for this matchup? You have to go down the decision tree, right? So if I queue Warrior, what does he then queue? What do I then counter queue for that in game 5? Right. And so on and so on, back and forth. And you have to work out which way the series pans out best, holistically as a whole. And in this case, it seems that Thijs has decided that Miracle Rogue is the way to go to pick up the Mage counter.
And we have seen Miracle Rogue, its ability similar to Warrior in some respects, to pile on early minion pressure, right? Like, as you've mentioned, outside of Immolation Aura, there's nothing that feels good, right, to clean up these Rogue-style early game boards. So there is a chance that Miracle Rogue is just fine. It might not be the best matchup in the world, but I don't think it's the worst. And maybe Thijs just thinks, you know what, Miracle Rogue, I get the early aggressive starts and just pile on pressure until it's over, and not give Frenetic time to do sort of the fancier card-drawn focus things that Demon Hunter wants to spend its turn doing.
Very solid hand over on Thijs' side. Good opener on Frenetic's side as well. You might look at this weirdly and say, well, how is that a good opener? None of these cards actually do anything. But they're all expendable, and that's what matters at this point of the game. You just don't want locked cards chewing up hand space in your hand at this point and chewing up outcast positions. So the fact that all of these cards are able to offer perhaps a little bit of cycle with the double jump, the Chaos Strike, and potentially the Illidari studies, which can pick up some cycle as well. And they're all free to be played is a big deal here. Going to set up the 1-2 punch with the weapon and the Chaos Strike in order to deny the Frenzy. Force Thijs to activate it himself if he would like to, which he can do with the Brain Freeze. Go Foxy Swindle, build up the hand, and then Brain Freeze the Octobot at the last moment if he wants to, but he's going to go one Thief instead, having picked that up.
If he's really scared of it, he could Shadow Step the Octobot. You can't one kill it if it's not on the board. But again, just looking at this, right, with this Chaos Strike plan, yes, it removes the Octobot in one hit, but there's still 2 minions on the board. They're going to hit next turn, right? So Thijs, at least, even with this, is retaining this board control. And now he has Neophyte to follow up with, which doesn't look too shabby.
Yeah, I think you'll hold it, in my opinion, from this point. I think even just like Netherwind Portal this turn,
sure,
or you go for a Secret Passage, because you really want to wait for the Skull Signal, right, before you drop the Neophyte, whether it's...
You're some kind of vigilante?
Yeah, you got to send up the Skull Signal. And then summon Skullman. Yeah, I don't really know how this is working anymore. But yeah, obviously, but by that I mean
Skull.
either it's turn 6 and then you know they're going to cast Skull, or you've received some kind of signal like Illidari studies, right? In which case you play it into their turn 5, which is what I mean by that. But yeah, Thijs seems to be on the same wavelength here.
I really want the flare animation to just pop up across the board when someone draws Skull.
I grow patient.
We go back to like TJ's point about saving a bunch of time with like Ticketus, right? Where it could just, or like if you queue into Priest, the flare animation goes off when they draw a Lucia if you're playing.
Yeah, and you're like, oh.
You could just save everyone's time and concede. That would be ideal, yeah.
Much the little character walks on, looks at you, and just shakes its head, and then walks off again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mankrik Brain Freeze looks okay here too, right? Doesn't even have to kill off the 4/4 if he doesn't want.
Yeah, it's pretty juicy.
Looks like he's going to trade. I got to push face.
Could even step the Mankrik here with the intention of going Secret Passage next turn and just really wanting to hit a 3/7, right? Obviously, you have to pay mana for it, but it's still very powerful. 3/7 charge for 3 mana, even if you haven't cast it from there. But I think with the Cult Neophyte, maybe, potential to block multiple turns, Thijs is viewing as a more powerful usage for that Shadow Step.
I was really surprised about that. Like, I think Thijs, if he didn't trade there, worst case is a Fell Screen Blast, but without Moargs, it wouldn't clear the board anyway. But if there was, say, a Immolation Aura, then the Fell Screamer dies regardless, right?
Right.
Silo gets 4/4 from the Netherwind Ball at last. And this is starting to look scary. And this is kind of what I meant right at the start of the game when we talk about the matchup in general. Rogue has this ability to basically just play the raw tempo matchup.
Right. Curious about the sequencing going down here. I guess like he doesn't have to cast Illidari Studies this turn because he can just still rip it into Mask if he needs to. So he's just going to work on the card draw instead. Playing the Blood Mage here kind of doubles his chances of just picking up Skull straight up from the right. I mean, I guess it doesn't because if you draw it off 1, it's not going to be an outcast position anyway. But still, drawing 2 cards instead of 1 at the start of the turn will increase his odds for decent plays on average for the next turn. But now I'm pretty sure Thijs will be very clearly eyeing his Cult Neophyte this turn.
Right. Thijs could even go for Van Cleef, right? To get Thanos.
For a Blood Mage, it's not that bad, yeah.
And just more card draw. Because that's the one thing he's missing, right? All the tempo's there, he's piling on the pressure, but outside of Secret Passage, he just might not quite have enough to keep it going.
Yeah. And honestly, even if Blood Mage just ends up like coming down to end the game with like Blood Mage, Wicked Stab, or something like later,
still damage.
Still end up being relevant. I wouldn't have minded it. Those are the eyes of a player looking to the history bar to figure out what this Vanessa Van Cleef is going to offer.
And it's not like you can realistically say, oh, I'm going to save Van Cleef for when he skulls, right? Because probably going to play somewhere else.
Yeah, just in the end choosing not to develop it because he's valuing it as a minion, right? Just doesn't want to drop it into the Sigil Flame, which is very reasonable. I don't think Blood Mage is enough of a premium card that it really justifies going for it that hard. Now, unfortunately now, the way Thijs has done this, separating it out over multiple turns, it means that Illidari Studies into Skull is actually still not possible on a following turn because of the way the discounts work, right? Because he'd have to pay 2 and then 6 for the Skull. He'd have to pay 8 in total, even with the discount factored in.
Oh. Could even Tenmu this Neophyte.
Good mercenaries.
For 5 costs.
Mm-hmm.
Give me that. Not what I
So Tenmu's not going to come down there.
Not what I
Again, not a big deal. I know we've talked about this a lot with like, you know, plays where you just end up consuming the Tenwu buff without using it on that turn. It just goes back to full cost. Not as big a deal when it's a Cult Neophyte, right? When you're only losing just 1 discount. It's just kind of worth in that case in some scenarios, but Thijs just choosing to max out on tempo here instead.
So, Frenetic on 14. Didn't quite catch the golem. I hope for Thijs' sake it's +2/+2, because that would be pretty sick.
Would be pretty insane here, yeah. And the way
Divine
it's being
Shield, summon a copy.
jammed. Yeah, Divine Shield, summon a copy, okay.
Rigged?
2 cards always or 3 cards sometimes? How much do you believe? Wow, okay, you greedy boy.
But you've actually... Wait, I guess it depends on if he plays this Vanessa. No, okay. I was just going to say, you could have put the... he could have split the Divine Shields further apart, right? If he played the Vanessa this turn. And if he'd put the Mage in the middle. Still though, Frenetic's got a lot of catching up to do card draw-wise. If he wants to be able to fight back on this board, and... I mean... It's a lot of spell damage, but... Nothing to even proc the Divine Shields right now. Guess what card he needed, Sottle?
Was it Skull of Gul'dan?
Oh, I was going to say Immolation Aura, but...
Oh, okay. Just going to have to go talented Fellscream Blast this turn, right? And just clear out the entire left-hand side of the board. 15 healings, just not even that impressive. It's amazing how pathetic spell damage is in comparison to Moargs. When you start stacking it up, like, if you don't have Moargs, just forget about it. Your deck just does nothing.
Yeah, Frenetic, you shouldn't have even made that play. No Moargs. Like, just forget about it.
What are you doing? Why are you even trying to win this tournament game in an extremely important high-level Hearthstone tournament? You should just give up.
Yeah, I really like this, Alex. Now, you've just seen a basically desperation board clear. Drop an 8/8, deal 8 more. There's double Wicked Stab in hand.
Yep.
Looks good to me.
Agreed. And I am reticent to count out OTK Demon Hunter in any individual game of Hearthstone. But I don't think even this skull can put the dream together. Well, he's picked up 2 healing cards and a board clear so far, but no, I'm still not seeing it. Again, no Moargs, right? That's what he needed.
Yep. It's pretty rough, actually. Like, bottom 9.
Yep. The Chaos Strikes, still unplayable. I don't think he has played his... Has he played his Fell Screamer? He has played a Fell Screamer, right?
Yes.
But actually, he can still Chaos Strike into a Moarg. And then potentially
That's
be
the
alive.
Moarg.
Okay. How does that help?
I don't know. You said it. I'm just following along and bringing up the cards that are left for you.
So if he goes Moarg, I-Beam on the left, that deals 6. He then goes Fell Scream in the center, deals 2, and then he goes Immolation Aura, and that clears the board. He is very much alive, but I just don't think his deck gets the job done after this fact. We will wait and see as to whether this can get done. If he holds on to the Fellscream Blast, I guess that's reasonable. Okay, sure. Well, he can't survive the hand that Thijs has and still win the game, but again, I think, as I mentioned much earlier in the broadcast, sometimes you make the right play and lose the game, and I think that is exactly what Frenetic has done in that spot.
Yeah, using second Fell Scream Blast along with the I-Beam as well just makes him actually, okay, let's survive a turn to just lose later. So yeah, I respect the play from Frenetic, and honestly, I respect even just going for it at that point, right? Because that, I think, was a point where he could have conceded, but he did recognize that he had a potential play.
Yeah, twice in a row, I think, OTK Demon Hunter's been in some pretty high-level spots, and, everyone involved has been on board with it. I think Frenetic understood his outs very well there. And I think Thijs specifically as well, rationing out Cold Neophyte over 2 specific turns. Now, the second one has no effect just on Skull of Gul'dan, right? Cast on 7, 4/7. That was still possible. However, Thijs understood that, sometimes it's not just straight up Skull of Gul'dan. Sometimes it's Illidari Studies into Skull of Gul'dan. And by playing it, rationing out over 2 separate turns with the Shadow Step, he was able to beat that for 2 turns running. And it's not like, for example, Frenetic can even see the Shadow Step and go, okay, well, I'll at least play the Illidari Studies this turn, so I've at least got that mana spent. Because then his Skull won't be in outcast position the next turn when he goes to show it, goes to play it. So there's no actual way to play around that from the Demon Hunter side. So I think that is a really nice sort of mechanical interaction that Thijs picked up on there with the Shadow Step. Very nicely done.
It does look like Frenetic is moving on to Face Hunter to try and take down Thijs' Rogue now, as he does get this sort of free pick into it. It's slightly different different than the Hunter we saw earlier on. There's the arcane shots in there and also not running Ace Hunter Queen and having Knife Vendor as well. So ever so slightly different list, but pretty much the same thing, pretty much the same job going on there. You just want to overrun the board and make Rogue have to try and juggle dealing with multiple minions on board and avoiding that kind of damage permanence outside of Alexstrasza that Rogue has to struggle with.
Yeah, that's right. This is when I was talking earlier about how I felt like there was a list that I was extolling the virtues of way back when we were in Conquest format in GM. This is the list that's most similar to that, right? Without the extra weapons, without the Ace Hunter Queen, without the True Aim Crescent, all that kind of stuff. It's just the one Knife Vendor in place of, is a Ringling's Rifle he's not playing? What's the one-off that he's dropped in place of the one-off Knife Vendor?
Well, it could be a few things, right? Because, for example, Kreen was in AROX earlier.
Sure. Yes.
Which it kind of depends. The key one that he is, I guess, missing/changed. Oh no, he has two of them. Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't tell you because to me this is the base list with the one Knife Vendor.
Yeah, there is a Ringling's Rifle in there, so it's certainly not best, just to clarify that.
There's just there's a few little options you can change depending, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just one last floating one of that he's choosing to play as a Knife Vendor, which, again, says a lot about the kind of matchups he's going for, where he is just very focused on outright damage. He doesn't care too much about True Aim Crescent or Ace Hunter Queen and actually fighting on the board and potentially, getting some extra value out of his Rhinos, which can convert into more damage. He's just playing cards that straight up say deal damage on them and being a very focused Face Hunter style strategy.
If you like this start though from Frenetic, you'd have to show me some pretty incredible cards to not want to coin out a Felmore on one. But now Thijs has his own Felmore.
He does, and this is just part of why Vanessa is so insane. Forget about that Felmore in hand for Thijs. A decent chance, probably around 50-50. It just never gets played this game because Thijs will never really want to wait 2 turns for that minion to wake up. But he just played a 3-2 and a 2-3 on turn 2 against an aggro deck, right? Like, he just won the board on turn 2 by using Foxy Fraud. Just the fact that it's a River Croc that says combo on it, stop reading at that point. In a lot of occasions, it doesn't matter what the actual combo says. It's just the fact that it's getting discounted by the Foxy Fraud enables so many disgusting starts to happen.
Yeah, it just says combo and then the Pulp Fiction meme, right? Of him just going,
Yeah, exactly.
That's all that matters. Honestly, from Thijs, I actually wouldn't mind seeing the Felmore come down here because it's also a relatively, potentially good response to Frenetic's Felmore, right? Because his will proc afterwards.
Yeah, but however, unless you also then play Prize Plunderer, like if you went Prize Plunderer first and then Felmore, I don't like it so much because you'd be leaving it in a 1-minion situation against the Felmore waking up this turn, right? Whereas the play that Thijs made is what I favoured. It's just so much more irritating against the Felmore waking up, and obviously just the significant discounts that you get on Swindle in hand in particular. He can use the Felmore just as a 1-mana combo activator on the following turn if he really needs to.
Yep, that's true. And this is a really nice play. Gets to kill off the 2-1, leaves 1-3 on the board, but because he didn't do, I guess, the more natural thing you do in most games, which is buff your pack leader, then he actually put the buff on the Felmore to make it that little bit more sticky.
Yep, that's right, because there is the 1 attack minion on the other side, just buffing that up to a 6-2. Oh my goodness, imagine being Thijs, Raven.
These are the games you lose as Hunter.
They sure are, yeah, Frenetic knows it as well. Yeah. But yeah, going back to the buff, obviously that makes sense. He had a 5-1 on board against a 1-3, which is obviously a miserable state to be in, so he buffed it up to a 6-2 instead. But decisions like that rarely matter when your opponent just rips the nuts, the 2 most efficient removal cards in their entire deck off the Swindle. Kind of dead.
Victory is in my grasp.
Just 27, kind of dead.
Yeah.
It's like the early game when Mage got to 24.
Was I wrong? Thijs died that game as I remember it.
No sarcasm in my voice.
Okay. Alright, that's okay. For now at least.
Yeah. Frenetic's got something.
does mean that Frenetic is going to have a semblance of board parity to just be able to play Barak into on this turn. However, he doesn't have the OTK setup, which if you're not familiar, it's kind of a meme, but you know, some people will refer to it as the OTK. You play Mankrik on 3 and then you play Barak on 5. And
OTK's changed a lot of its meaning from when I was a kid, Sol.
Yeah. It's a dumb joke, but the point being, I'm pretty sure that curve has almost 100% win rate in Face Hunter if you're able to get that going. There's very, very few things in the game that stop that curve from happening, since the Barak just immediately pulls out the wife from the deck and you get in range Mankrik going face alongside Quick Shot and everything else, and it is basically just lethal at that point. But Frenetic has not had the start to be able to support that up until this point.
Thijs is not having any kind of mid game right now. That is effectively back-to-back whiffs. I keep wanting to suggest just play the field contact, but I just don't think he can. I just don't think he can.
Can you play it and step it, or is it better to have the step for the Battlecry / combo minion that comes on the following turn?
I like it because even if next turn you don't need it, you then have to step for Alexstrasza, which is a big deal as well.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You raise a good point.
Okay, Frenetic's getting cooking again now. Nice 4 damage to face. Oh no!
Oh, I'm sorry. Imagine being Thijs, but with the exact opposite connotations. I apologize, Thijs, for suggesting that you got lucky this game.
Oh, now we can Alex 3 times.
Brutal. I'm not sure playing an 8/8 that heals you for 8 every turn and doing nothing else actually gets there against Face Hunter.
I want to argue with you.
Okay.
Because, okay, here's my plan. 8/8. Heal. Don't step it. Let it go face. Shadow step it. Go. I think that gets there against Hunter sometimes.
Okay.
I mean, maybe not now that Thijs has seen the Barak. Because he does just get to draw a quick shot, which is one of the reasons I like this build and not the Scavengers build, for example. Because I just prefer just guaranteeing quick shots at this point in the game.
Right. Okay, so here we are. Time to find out whether 3 Alexstrasas is going to win the game. Okay, no, he's going to divert. He's going to look to draw through his deck instead, which I do like. And I think kind of signals where Thijs stands on proceedings as well, right? That he doesn't feel like just shadow stepping Alexstrasza multiple times is going to get it done.
I think if there was anything that wasn't Barak, I think he could have got away with it. Because you know there's at least a quick shot in hand, and you know there's another card that Frenetic's not played for a while, and there's a 3/5 and a 3/2 on the board. You're just expecting the minion to die, and then that negates the whole point of the plan, right?
Yeah. Crucial interaction that might appear at some point. Piercing shotting a Divine Shield just treats it as if it hits however much health the minion has, in case that does come up in the lethal situation. Thijs, just be dead.
He's like, no, there's still a chance!
Well, he's dead, but on the plus side, he set a world record for most Guardian Org Merchants played in a single turn, so there's that.
Yeah, and honestly, that initially, that was looking quite good for Thijs, but what, 3 dead draws in a row?
Yeah.
Just ruined him there, which is, it doesn't happen often with Rogue, it really doesn't, but it can, and the fact that it was 3 dead draws with the other card in hand being Alexstrasza exactly, again, if that was almost any other card in his deck, he's fine, because it's either a playable minion, or it's a minion or spell that will proc the field contact he had, and then obviously Rogue does its thing, right? So, just a very unfortunate series of events there.
Yeah, and honestly, like, the first draw with the field contact wasn't that bad. It was a dead draw, of course, like Secret Passage or whatever else. Like, so there was a million things that were better, don't get me wrong. But the first draw wasn't that terrible because he was significantly ahead on board still at that point, and he could afford it, right? So he still had his own Imprisoned Felmore waking up that turn, so he still had a decent amount of board control. only if the next draw was then a battle cry or a combo minion, right? And he could then start going off with the field contact. Like, it was a very nice thing to have in hand when he was top decking, but it was the fact that he was then drew dead again with Shadow Step and then again with Shadow Step, which were honestly two of the only dead draws in his deck at that point. You saw from the cards that were drawn after he started to get going with the Guardian Org Merchant how powerful the rest of his deck was at that point. Like, imagine just top deck Jandis instead, right? Like, GG at that point.
Yeah.
But instead he had to sit there with a couple of Shadow Steps in his hand, just twiddling his thumbs and waiting to die, and in the end, that's what happened.
Yeah, and the way this has worked out now is Frenetic is going to be playing his Hunter against Thijs' Warrior. If he wins this, of course, he wins the series and he moves on. If Thijs takes the victory, Thijs is going to have Warrior versus Mage as the final game there. So pretty interesting. And I would honestly say this still feels very close as a series. I think Warrior can take down Hunter. There are some Hunter draws that go too fast for Warrior. But if that does happen, again, I think Warrior's got okay game versus Mage as well. So I think this series is actually still very, very close.
I sound like a broken record when I talk about Face Hunter, but I always come back to it in the non-straightforward matchups. Kolkar Pack Runner is just the card that changes everything, because if you as Face Hunter in this matchup can just go Kolkar, Coin, and a couple of spells early, I know, very difficult to say, then you can just spread so wide that really the only thing that interacts with you at that point is like Samuro, right? Blademaster Samuro coming down, and oh my god, yes, that hand, exactly that hand. That hand right there, and yes, that's the counter right there on the other side as well from Thijs. This is exactly what I was talking about.
I was getting confused. I thought you were starting to promote your own like drinks brand of Coca-Cola or something. I was getting like, what was he trying to get out here? Was he trying to slip into conversation?
Yeah.
Here though, Frenetic, I mean, that's what you want. I play Hunter a lot, and I would want that. The ordering is interesting though, right? And this is what gets pretty tricky, is like, how does Frenetic play this hand?
Right, because the explosive turn of just being able to go like Kolkar, Pack Runner, Coin, Demon Companion is still possible, because the Demon Companion can just come down on one, right? So I kind of like that curve, but weirdly, it's just so much time without an Imprisoned Felmore in play, right? Like, is that really legal when you're playing Face Hunter?
What? Oh, okay. Ooh. What would push me to coin Felmore is Warrior actually doesn't really have a good source of 4 damage, right? So, like, even if it trades, it would need an exact 3 a lot of the time to kill off, and it soaks up so much of the Warrior's potential board as well. So pretty interesting there. Frenetic just kept the coin and wants to go very wide.
Yeah, he's going ridiculously ham. Like, he's kind of almost just betting this game on Blademaster Samuro not being in hand for Thijs, and unfortunately that's a bet he's going to lose. Because by delaying by 1 extra turn, he does allow the Samuro to come down immediately and deal with this board state, right? But obviously he gets maximum pop-off potential here with the
and also
maximum spells. And hitting the Leok there is so clutch as well. Oh my goodness.
Kolek, but yeah.
It's a Leok, shut up.
Kolkar, Kolek, Kolek?
Okay, redeemed.
Yeah, but even this isn't so bad, right? Because Thijs, if he chooses Blademaster, puts it into the Kolek, okay. There's still the Pack Runner and the Felmore's about to go off.
Yep.
So I actually think, weirdly, Thijs should try and look somewhere else. Like, he could even play Maker and go into the Kolek with the 2/1/1s, because then, if the Felmore hits the Playmaker, the Felmore just dies.
Raven, you're on rare form. It's exactly what I was about to suggest to set up the potential 2-turn clear with the Blademaster. The problem that runs into is that you're still kind of 1 turn behind, because the Felmore's waking up on that turn as well. So but you do have the upside of having the 4/3 Playmaker in play at that point, right, though? Which means that the Felmore can kill itself, but if it doesn't, the Blademaster is going to come down and still not be able to deal with the Felmore, which represents a lot of damage the turn after. And just going back to the previous turn, the only reason this board is so resistant to the Blademaster is because the Kolek came out, right? Otherwise, he just wouldn't have had enough rush power to get through all the minions on the other side.
Correct, yeah. Because although the Shima would have been fine to soak the Blade Master. It wouldn't have provided the extra damage needed.
That's right.
Yeah, Thijs just wants to preemptively set up some of the board by playing 2 minions there. He does obviously make it more likely Felmore hits a minion than face. Again, I like this face damage.
Yep, just re-establishing, just going, okay, I made my early push with the pack runner. Now,
you don't want to say Kolkar now, do you?
I don't want to say Kolkar, no, you're right. I went in early. You'll make fun of me if I do, Raven. My ego is very fragile. But yeah, he doesn't want to go in too hard with the Kolkar pack runner anymore because he knows that the threat of Blade Master is very real from this point onwards. So having one Rhino in hand, the ability to just play Warsong Wrangler and get that double buff on the Rhino, especially with all these bumper car 1-1s potentially coming down now as well, right? This is so much damage! This is a strictly illegal amount of damage that is about to go face this turn. Frenetic, play the other one, please. Thank you. You've already given it away by picking up the first one first, but still, play the one.
Maybe he wanted to piercing shot.
Yeah.
And I love this. I was just about to say, I didn't think he would, but if any of these minions trade, I'm going to be upset because this is where you end the game, right?
Yes.
There's no messing around with trading. You're not playing for the board because you aren't Rush Warrior, right? You don't have the reasonable tools to do so. So I like this. He's forcing Thijs to trade. He's pushing a ton of damage. There's Rhino number 2. There's Piercing Shot. There's Demon Companion. And, just a reminder, you can Piercing Shot your own minion. Therefore, he can always get 5 if he wants or needs 5. Because they're Walperting.
Oh, wow, this is perfect as well. By perfect, I mean the exact required amount of 1-1 rushes, because even having one more would be strictly worse than that
Knife Bender
scenario.
Yeah. Dildo gets to push. What's that? 6?
Yep, 6 more.
Oh, it's sort of Knife Bender, Piercing Shot, hero powers.
It's just not there. It's just not there. There's no way Thijs survives all this from this position.
The way you win this from Warrior is you need to be ahead almost from turn 1/2.
Yes.
Like, you just need to be ahead. If you're ahead, you'll probably win. The second you fall behind, gone.
Coin, Crab Rider, Bumper Car or something, right, in the early game so that you're just very efficiently clearing up all their early game tokens. If you fall behind, you're constantly just playing catch up. That's kind of the dynamic of Rush, right? It's very powerful, but it's rarely proactive. It normally just resigns you to just being one turn behind if you're not able to get those big buffs down.
Yep.
Let me work my magic.
Knife Bender coming down there, pushing as much damage as possible, gets extra minion hero power, and no surprise to see this Volpatinga Piercing Shot be kept, because as I mentioned, he can just deal, 7 damage guaranteed next turn?
Yep. 5 damage from the shot. These are unbuffed Wolpertingers. The Rhinos were the buff choices this game from the Warsong Wrangler. So 5 damage from the Piercing Shot on his own minion, 2 damage from the hero power. Beats the armor up with Thijs going up to 6. Should be a nice, clean 3-1 victory to end the day.
And I'll throw this out there right now. I wouldn't have opened like Frenetic opened this game.
Same.
But I don't hate it. I think it was pretty good, actually.
No, completely agree. And I think it's a huge victory. And I think after, me kind of sending up the, let's call it the good Hearthstone signal to be in calling with how we're saying. So we need to end the day on a high note. Cleanse our palettes with a high-quality series. I think that's exactly what we saw there from both players. All of those games, right? Apart from kind of the damp squib of the Demon Hunter game that Frenetic had, the one where he lost with Demon Hunter, where there's just really nothing doing. All of the games outside of that were, I think, really crucial, really nail-biting. Lots of very high-level, intricate decisions and spots made by both players in both situations. And I think even then, in a Face Hunter game that looked very, very straightforward, I echo exactly the point that you're making, Raven, which is I don't think I would have played the game like that, and I think I may have lost because of it. And honestly, I think if we had a Most Improved award, which always comes off as quite patronizing, but I don't mean it to be, I might be tempted to give it over to Frenetic, because I honestly, hand on heart, was not that impressed with what I saw from him in the Masters Tour, where he qualified, right? Even though he ended up victorious, he didn't necessarily seem like he was a player who was on the level of some of the luminaries that we have in European Grandmasters. And even though he is still kind of struggling in the league table overall, I think